major changes in Portland for 2024. I'm going to recap those in this video very quickly. You won't want to miss this one. Stick around. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Living in Oregon, or if you're new to this channel, Living in Oregon, we show you what it's like to live here, specifically focusing on the Portland metropolitan area, including Vancouver, Washington. If you want to see more videos about what it's like to live here, make sure and subscribe. I'm one of your hosts, Seth Marchant, licensed real estate broker in Oregon and Washington. I was born and raised here in Portland, Oregon, and there's been a lot of years where there wasn't much change. Not much changed over the time that I grew up here, but there's been quite a bit of change in the last couple of years, and a lot of change in 2024. One of the biggest things is that we have a new mayor. Our previous mayor, Ted Wheeler, had a little bit of a rough run.
The mood was festive in a way at Monday night's protest outside Mayor Ted Wheeler's apartment building. It was his birthday, and people were calling for him to resign.
Our new mayor, Keith Wilson, I believe is relatively unknown. I hadn't heard of him before. Perhaps he managed to get elected through our new voting system, which I'll cover here in just a moment. So Keith does not have a background in politics. He is a businessman. He owns a trucking company. As a business owner myself, I own a few businesses, in fact, not just this real estate business. And so as a business owner myself, I probably have a little bit of bias towards a person like that. If you've ever started a business and made a dollar for yourself before, one of probably the key traits of creating and operating a business is problem solving. So I imagine Keith is probably a pretty good problem solver, and I imagine that's probably a pretty good trait to have if you're governing. So having somebody that has some experience in the private sector, maybe not jaded so much by the public sector, it's going to be interesting to see what Keith brings to the table. And one of the biggest things that he ran on was ending homelessness.
Victor on election night. He pledged with his experience founding the nonprofit Shelter Portland, he can end unsheltered homelessness in Portland within 1 year.
Which has been a problem for a lot of cities in the United States, and Portland has been no exception. The lockdowns that started in 2020 really seem to exacerbate that problem. There's definitely been a lot of complaints about homelessness. Before 2020, of course it was a problem back then too, but it just wasn't as prevalent. You didn't have like the camps and the RVs that we see now, like these large encampments with like dozens of people. So it's a problem that's really expanded, and Keith claims to have the solutions for this. In fact, he said that he's going to end homelessness in his first year. Now, it's a pretty bold claim, given that the problem, like I said, it's just so prevalent, so many different places. I definitely don't consider myself or think of myself as a homelessness expert, but if there's one thing that's obvious to me about this homelessness problem, is that the solution is not obvious. Example of how to solve this problem, but again, Keith being a problem solver, I'm hopeful that he's going to maybe have some other solutions that others haven't. He does have some background in working with the homeless. He has started a nonprofit in the past that has helped to shelter people. And Keith, he does have a distinction between homelessness and unsheltered homelessness, and he wants to tackle the unsheltered homelessness first.
And you're careful when you talk about ending homelessness that you talk about unsheltered homelessness. What does that mean? What's the difference?
Very, very discrete differences. Unsheltered homelessness are those that are suffering on the street in tents, in makeshift shelters, in boats, in RVs. Those are the ones that are in most harm's way right now. And so the goal is to be able to care for those, to end unsheltered homelessness. Once they're being cared for in a safety and secure shelter and sleep, now we have the ability to start focusing on ending homelessness. Our city, our focus has been trying to end homelessness, but in all the cities I've viewed that have had success, you have to end unsheltered homelessness first.
I know sometimes all this verbiage can be a little bit difficult to keep up with. For the longest time, it was just homelessness. And then we had the unhoused. That was kind of like the terminology for a while. I'm usually happy to go with whatever the colloquial language is within reason. And so that seemed like that was like the term for a while, but then I learned there was an ideology behind it, which is to say that a lot of people believe that use that term unhoused. They believe that the homelessness situation is just purely a shelter problem and that we just don't have enough roofs to put over people's heads.
Yeah, and that just leads to the conclusion that there are different reasons for people being homeless. It's not just one thing. Lack of housing, of course, is the obvious, but there are reasons that tie into that, right?
Yeah, nope, it's actually just the lack of housing.
Just the
I
lack
know
of
it's
housing.
shocking. It shocks everyone, and I think.
And I've said this before, but I reject that concept because it neglects the people that have mental health issues, people that have addiction issues. Those people need more help than just having a roof put over their head. And so when we say that it's just purely a housing problem, and speaking as a real estate professional, of course, that's near and dear to my heart. I think that we're forgetting about some other people. Now, Keith had mentioned that this is near and dear to his heart, but it's probably relative to a lot of us. A lot of us have known somebody at some point that was homeless, but he mentioned somebody very specifically close to him. I think it was his brother that was homeless at some point.
Well, it's personal for me, but I'd say it's personal for a lot of families in Portland too. So while, yes, my brother about 20 years ago was homeless, addicted, suffered from mental illness. My parents and I had the wherewithal to care for him.
And also, he mentioned, suffered from addiction. So I would imagine that Keith probably shares my sentiment in that this homelessness problem is not just simply a lack of roofs to put over people's heads. It's a much more complex problem that requires more solutions than just shelter. Now, one thing you might be wondering, some of the details of this. I don't have all of the details, but the plan is to deal with the unsheltered homeless first. Those are the people that are really suffering the most. The people that Keith didn't describe it this way, but I think this is what the distinction is between homelessness and unsheltered homelessness. Unsheltered homeless people are people that don't have a consistent place to go for shelter. Homeless people, they might have some place to go, they just don't have a consistent place to go. And so part of what they're going to do is there's going to be a team of people that will go out and enforce the new non-camping ban. So that is one of the changes that we had in 2024 is people are not allowed to camp anywhere that they want, whereas during lockdowns for a period of time, people literally were told that they could camp anywhere they want.
You talk about the no camping ban, the city's no camping ban. So once you have an emergency shelter for everyone, you intend to enforce the city's no camping ban, and what does that look like?
It means our outreach workers go out in the morning or at night, and they're there to say, I want to help you. What does it look like? But you can't stay here.
So the team will go out and address people that are either camped in a place that they're not supposed to be, or somebody that appears to be an unsheltered homeless person. And these people are going to be offered shelter. And if you're camping or dwelling somewhere, it could be maybe like an RV or something like that, that you're not supposed to be, the consequence of that is going to be arrested, which is where I think all of us know that problem gets really, really tricky, right? Because putting homeless people in jail is probably not going to solve the problem. Threatening them, of course, you're threatening somebody that has nothing or next to nothing, probably has nothing. So, threats don't mean too much to those people. And of course, you put them in jail, what are they going to do when they get out of jail? They're going to go right back to doing the same thing. So that is going to be the consequence for the people that don't follow the camping ban. And part of this problem, addressing this problem of homelessness, is not allowing people to just dwell wherever they want. and there is going to be a consequence of potentially putting them in jail if they don't comply. So I think, like I said, that's where it kind of really gets tricky, and we'll see how that works. Certainly rooting for Keith to fix these problems, and it sounds like he at least has some plans and some intentions that the others have not had in the past. So I think at a minimum, I think he's probably going to have some success. Will he solve homelessness in his first year as mayor? Well, that remains to be seen. We'll see about that. Next big thing, next big change for Portland in 2024, we have a new government.
Help us understand what your new relationship is going to be like with this new city council. 12 members, and they're going to be significantly more powerful than the current council because you're not going to have any veto power. So
That's right.
What's that going to look like, and are you getting to meet some of them already?
So before, we had 5 commissioners, of which the mayor was one of those people. Now we have 12 elected city council members. There's 4 districts, so there'd be 3 city council members for each district. And the mayor will not be a part of that. So kind of gives up, the mayor's sort of giving up a little bit of power. I think the idea is that a lot of the day-to-day stuff is going to be handled by the city council. And that will kind of open up the mayor's time to deal with some of the bigger things like homelessness. The other big thing in conjunction with that is voting. We have ranked choice voting. If you haven't heard of ranked choice voting, it's not very common. I'm a little bit indifferent on it. I'm not sure if it's a better thing or not. It seems like it could be. So if you don't know what ranked choice voting is, it's a method of voting where you don't just vote for one person, you vote for multiple people. Let's say there's half a dozen, like 6 people. You get to rank who you want first, who you want second, who you want third, so on and so forth. And then all the votes are counted up. And if nobody has more than 50% of the votes, one person will be eliminated, the person at the bottom. And the votes that went to that person are going to be the second and third, so on and so forth. Your second, third, fourth choice will be redistributed to the remaining candidates, and that process will happen as many times as it takes to get to a winner. So I think the concept behind ranked choice voting is, probably heard some people more so recently complaining about you only feel like you have 2 candidates and you don't really like either of those candidates, and if you don't you feel like you can only vote for one of those 2 because the candidate that you like doesn't have any chance of winning. So I've heard people refer to it as like the lesser of 2 evils. I'm gonna choose the lesser of 2 evils, even though it's not the person I wanted to choose. Well, with ranked choice voting, you get to rank your candidates in order. So that way you can give some sort of vote to a person that maybe you preferred but didn't think that they were going to win before, whereas you couldn't do that before. And perhaps somebody that you didn't think had a chance of winning could now have a chance of winning. Haven't looked into it, but perhaps that's how Keith had some of his success. Again, he was really relatively unknown, and leading up to it, there wasn't really any polling that was showing that he was going to do very well. So perhaps ranked choice voting played a part in that. All right, one other change, and then a few changes maybe on the horizon. So we expanded our urban growth boundary. I believe most major cities have what's called a urban growth boundary that limits urban growth development into areas like forest land and farmland. And the city this year had to meet to determine if we had enough land within the current urban growth boundary to develop over the next 20 years. I guess they decided there was one place that we could add on to, which is Sherwood. So the urban growth boundary has changed, although it was just in Sherwood, which is a great area. Got a great new high school if you've got kids. Very highly desirable area in the Portland metropolitan area. All right, so what are some of the things on the horizon? A few other things that Keith, the new mayor-elect, mentioned. potentially Major League Baseball coming to Portland. That's been talk for quite a while. I guess we're as close as we've come. There's talk too of the WNBA, but I don't know where they're at with that. With the MLB, they actually have a place chosen for it. I guess that they're pretty far into the negotiations. Apparently, there's only one other city that's being considered, so it's us and one other city. Now, my only thought about that is I wonder if the other city that we're competing with and the people that are making those decisions and choosing the city, wonder if they're concerned with some of our numbers. And this is one thing that I didn't really hear. Doesn't mean that it hasn't happened. I just haven't heard it yet. Haven't really heard it addressed by the mayor-elect. But one of the big things that we've seen showing up in polling that's been a concern for people in the Portland metropolitan area is safety. There's been a fair amount of polling where people have said they don't feel as safe as they used to, or they don't feel safe in certain places, they don't feel safe at certain times, like at nighttime. And I think that sentiment has changed a little bit. Crime did go up after lockdowns in 2020. It has since sort of tapered off and kind of coming back down. But we're definitely not to where we were before 2020. Growing up in the Portland metropolitan area, it wasn't really ever known as an unsafe place. I didn't really personally know anybody that ever felt unsafe or ever got attacked or had any sort of like really violent thing happen to them. I didn't travel much growing up, just didn't have the means to do so, but I did visit a family member in South Bay, in Sunnyvale, in San Francisco, when I was about 15. It was my first time in California. And I was at a convenience store with my mother. It was late at night. We were picking up some groceries to take back to our hotel room. And outside of that convenience store, somebody was shot. And that was my first encounter with any sort of like real like violence, like inside of a city. I'm sure when I was growing up there were people shot in Portland. Never encountered it. First time I go to San Francisco, encounter it almost right away. So those things leave an impression on people. By the way, that was well over 20 years ago. It's probably actually quite a bit safer back then than it is now. But I think about those things when I think about other things like people's safety, and the vacancy rate for Portland is also not good. It's actually been, still be right now, the worst of any of the 50 largest cities in the United States. So what that means is a lot of people are not going downtown to go to things like they would like a Major League Baseball game. So I think that might be something that might need to be addressed. People need to feel safe. I'm guessing most major metropolitan area cities are going to be similar to Portland in that a lot of your stuff is like right downtown. That's where the Trailblazers play. The convention center is on the east side, right next to the Motor Center. We've got the Memorial Coliseum, where a lot of things, where there's a lot of events like concerts, things like that. Of course, a lot of the great restaurants. We have a big culinary scene here, the Portland Art Museum, the Arlington Schnitzer Hall. Everything is like downtown, which for people living in the suburbs of Portland is like a 20 or 30 minute drive. And most people were happy to drive 20 or 30 minutes for some of the amenities in downtown Portland, but we haven't seen that as much over the last few years. People aren't coming from outside of the suburbs to go to downtown Portland like they were in previous years. I would usually go to a Blazer game, like 1 or 2 games every year, and they were always sold out, every game, year after year. Now, of course, lockdowns played a part in this, but the Portland Trailblazers, their attendance is nowhere near what it used to be. And I will say that I think that the Pacific Northwest, our fans are very, very enthusiastic here. We kind of get snubbed when it comes to sports. We don't have a football team, we don't have a baseball team like we talked about. We've got a basketball team. We do have a hockey team. Seattle, their basketball team left. They went to OKC, Oklahoma City. They've got a football team, the Seattle Seahawks, of course, great baseball team in the Mariners, but we don't have as much sports up here in the Pacific Northwest as some of the other bigger cities. And of course, we're in West Coast time, so we play really late. So those East Coast cities really aren't watching West Coast games as much. You know, there's a couple of different things going on there. But I feel like the Pacific Northwest doesn't get that much love when it comes to sports. But our fans, I will say, our fans are very, very enthusiastic, whether it's professional sports or high school sports. If you ever go to a high school game, football game, basketball game, soccer game, volleyball game, whatever, people are very, very enthusiastic about sports around here. So when the Blazers are struggling as much as they are to fill seats, I think it's probably not just recovering from lockdowns. I think there's just a fair amount of people that just don't feel like it's worth it to go downtown anymore. So, you know, that's part of what I think about when I think about us trying to court and bring a Major League Baseball team to Portland. One other thing on the horizon that Keith Wilson, the mayor-elect, mentioned was he wants us to be carbon neutral.
The environment and reducing carbon emissions is really a top concern for a lot of Portlanders. I know it's really important to you. The city has a goal to eliminate carbon emissions by the year 2050 and to reduce by 50% below 1990 emissions in just really 5 years.
Yeah.
You told us here on Straight Talk, you want to make Portland the city in this country that has the lowest carbon footprint anywhere. How do you do that?
I think it was about, I should have written this down. I think it was like by 2035 or something like that. Which, you know, that's a nice thought, and that's a good goal to have, and I do appreciate the ambition too. I appreciate the ambition of bringing another major sports team, professional sports team here, doing something like becoming carbon neutral or having the lowest carbon footprint. The only kind of maybe concern is that, you know, that's going to come at a cost. It's not cheaper to be green. Keith specifically mentioned building homes as it relates to this too. He mentioned that part of how he wants us to lower our carbon footprint is by increasing the number of green codes.
Energy efficient focuses building up our new housing codes to make sure that we are the top of the line as far as green technology and green jobs. So
codes is kind of like a little rule that you have, all these little rules that you have to follow when you build a house. And so as a real estate broker, that definitely caught my ear. I don't know how much you followed the most recent presidential election, but there was one side that did talk quite a bit about cutting red tape, specifically as it relates to housing. What that jargon means, cutting red tape, that means just loosening or lowering regulations, just having fewer rules. Why? Because the more rules that you have, the more expensive it is, the more time it takes, the more energy, the harder it is to build. And so there's definitely been a sentiment to make building easier. So it's kind of interesting to hear Keith mentioning something that's going to make building be a little bit harder. And I have heard builders weigh in on this in the past. Now, if you haven't been in a new home recently, compared to like something mid-century, let's just say 50 years ago, homes built now are significantly more efficient than they were 50 years ago. So they're a lot easier to keep warm. Your bills are a lot lower. And you know, the difference between 97% efficiency, 98% efficiency, 99% efficiency, that's all pretty negligible. So I don't know if the juice is going to be worth the squeeze. There's a thing called ELEETE certification, which is like a national certification for efficiency. Builders have to pay for that. And I've had builders tell me that they don't do the ELEETE certification anymore because they didn't see it make any difference in their sales. So I just wonder if people really have like an appetite for potentially slowing down development to maybe make what are already very, very efficient homes a little bit more efficient. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, I have been talking specifically about Multnomah County, where Portland proper is. Again, the Portland metropolitan area. It's a tri-county area, including Washington and Clackamas County. You may also include Clark County, just across the Columbia River, where Vancouver, Washington is. And you may have heard me mention this before, but those areas, those counties are really insulated from Multnomah County. So a lot of the changes that we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years in Portland, I haven't really seen so much in Washington or Clackamas County. So what are some of the big changes that we saw in 2024 for Washington and Clackamas County, which is where places like Beaverton, Hillsborough, Lake Oswego, Oregon City, Milwaukee, Westland, places like that are? Not many. Not much changes in the suburbs. There hasn't really been any major changes. Nothing, at least, I think, to note. If anybody living here has anything, feel free to put it in the comments, but nothing really compared to what's happening in Multnomah County. But if you know of one, feel free to drop it in the comments. So I hope that helped you kind of to understand some of the changes that we saw in Portland in 2024. And it's going to be really interesting to see how these things play out in 2025. If you want to see how these things play out, make sure and hit the subscribe button. We release new videos every week. If you're thinking about moving here, myself and the other person from this channel, Paul Clem, we helped dozens of people in 2024 buy a home, buy a second home, buy an investment property, just about anything that you can think of, any kind of real estate transaction. We've helped just about anybody and everybody throughout 2024, from retirees to families, people looking for condos, beach houses, whatever it may be. If you're somebody that's thinking about moving to Oregon or Washington, if you have questions, anything at all, if you're ready to take the next steps, you can reach out. I invite you to call, text, email. You can hit that QR code. If you're watching from TV, that'll take you to our website where you can find all of our contact information and more, including more of our videos. And if this video helped you, if you liked it, please give me a like. Lets me know I'm doing a good job and that the video is doing well. As always, feel free to leave your comments. Talked about quite a few things that can be some hot buttons, you know, so we want to keep it civil. If you do post something in the replies, we'll be sure to reply back. And until next time, take care, everyone.